Welcome to Thanks for Visiting, a podcast that's part conversation, part time capsule. I'm your podcast host, Lex. In these minutes and moments, I'm sitting down with people I deeply respect and admire to explore life, the human experience, and the creative spirit. Together, we're creating our visitor records, snapshots of our existence and contributions while we're visiting here on planet Earth. Let's help each other navigate this wild human adventure called life.
It was an amazing pilgrimage that I had before going up into the jungles of Chiang Rai to do my training. 3/4 of the way up this mountain called Doi Su Tep, and you get to this top and there's this enormous bell that looks like the Liberty Bell without a crack in it, and they've inscripted on it, anyone who hits this bell in honor of healing, an individual or a collective, this reverberation will go out from the mountain. And I was just like, I'm getting chills just thinking about this, right?
In this episode of Thanks for Visiting, I'm talking with the champ, Kenny Champion, founder of Somatic Homecoming, master somatic healer. I'm honored to be related to this vibrant soul and that life lined up in such a way that we were both born into the Gasparic family tree. But man, my cousin Kenny, you are something special.
Aw.
I've always looked up to you, and you just have this warm, joyous soul and amazing way about you. Thanks for being here.
Wow, my pleasure. What an introduction. Love you, cousin.
Love you.
And I feel the same way about you. Your voice itself is just such a lovely healing frequency. And then all of your innate wisdom that you are wise beyond your years, just as an added bonus.
All reconnected by you reaching out after the LA fires, checking on me, which I appreciate.
Wow.
And then it went to a, hey, how are you? And hey, I hate Facebook Messenger. Here's my phone number. and we're like, same. And we've just been rediscovering that we're kindred spirits in many ways. And we just got in pretty quick, back and forth texting. And then it went to audio messages. And this is our first actual phone call.
Yes.
Probably, maybe even ever.
Yes. Isn't that amazing?
I love it. I like that we talked about how our bubbas got this together. They're like, the kids need to talk.
They really did. They're amazing ladies, man.
You and I were exchanging these audio memos, which we started calling the Cuzzy Cast, back and forth.
Yes.
And we were talking about deep things, giving updates on life and what's been kind of beautiful and hard. And then I just realized like how you bring humor into this situation, and it made me think of our grandmas.
Oh man, they were such a funny lot. Your grandma, especially since she lived much longer than mine, she would always light up every time she saw me, because I think she just saw my gram in me. And you know, they were such spitfires, and just full of life and energy and able-bodiedness, physicality. Like, it's unheard of these days. They were always doing stuff, physically walking everywhere.
Baking, I remember like every Christmas and Easter going over to my Bubba's, and she's like, get to work, and like making all the nut roll and bread for the Slovakian church.
Yes. I remember in college, back in the 90s, coming back to Pittsburgh to visit, and I was at Aunt Agnes's place when she was making her apricot rolls and nut bread and stuff. Aunt Ag would scrape the inside of every egg yolk with her finger, and I'm going, wow, that is insane. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, these women were like just coming out of the Great Depression as immigrants. So
yes.
Yeah, they had to save everything. And now here we are with the price of eggs. I'm doing the same damn thing in 2025, man. I'm like scraping the shit on the inside of the egg yolk. Like there is like my fingers are raw. I'm getting all that yolk out of that thing. So stories like that are fantastic. I can't remember your grandma's fingers, but my grandmother's fingers were like such bad arthritis. They were bent at the tips, and yet she was a healer herself. Her touch and the way she would just be able to cook. She cut our hair growing up as kids. It just amazed me how it just like they were tenacious, unwavering. They just made it happen.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think clearly these ties of our grandmothers run through us. Like you were saying, your grandmother is a healer and you are a healer. But when we talked about how, like Elizabeth, like that lineage where they were generous and they wouldn't turn away, she'd never turn away a beggar. I've heard you say you've had from beggars to billionaires on your mat.
Yes.
So
True story. Do
you want to jump in? Do you want to tell me about your work?
Yeah, like I've always been good with my hands. And early on, I remember having a bad fight with my mom and my Emma, your Graham's sister. She was always looking out for me. And my mom and I would get into a fight and I'd get sent to my room or something. I'd be up there crying. I remember this one memory where I was crying so much that I fell asleep on her lap. And it was in the summertime. I remember the windows being open. And the next thing I know, 2-3 hours must have gone by. This woman did not move an inch. And I woke up on her lap. And I will never forget that. And I bring that kind of safe space holding that is just ingrained in our DNA to every one of my somatic sessions.
I love that.
And you know, professionally, I started Somatic Homecoming back in 2019, and I was working through a concierge medical practice where I was getting flown around by several billionaires to Uruguay, up to Shasta, California, Cabo. And, you know, the billionaire loved my work, and then it was his private chefs, his wife, and it just like, they couldn't wait till Ken showed up because everybody was going to be like coming back home to their bodies and being their best authentic self. And so that's kind of what gave me the idea for the name Somatic Homecoming. And being proudly from Pittsburgh, the city of bridges, I tell my clients, I see myself as bridging you back home to yourself before all the stuff of life got to you, before your 9/11 towers came down, whether that's a horrific physical accident, car accident, emotional abuse, traumas. I see that all as in a blanket of trauma, and it is your story. It is important to honor that. It's my job to be a conduit of healing energies for that. And I'd love to stress, I don't use the word healer lightly. And it's only been this past year where I've kind of gained the confidence enough to call myself a master somatic healer, because I live out in the Bay Area and that word gets thrown around like confetti out here. And I'm like, you kind of have to have healed yourself from something major in your life to use that term. And like I have several times, but also nobody heals you but yourself. And a healer knows this. Indigenous women especially, and unfortunately the abysmal patriarchy that we're all still under the oppressive role of, we lost that through lineage. But these women, these elders, the great-grandmothers, is still a committee that I revere and look up to as a mode of operation. You know, they will all tell you the body has amazing somatic intelligence to heal itself.
Yep. Whether
Whether it is a physical accident, emotional carnage, all types of abuse, divorce, grief, abandonment wounds. I mean, that one is across the board one of the hardest to get over. And a majority of my clients have all suffered from that. And the way I'm able to help them heal is I say it with pride, but with reverence, and say, I tiptoe around this word healer, but let you know, I cannot heal you. I am a conduit of healing, and I'm a 6'1" bamboo flute of flowing conduit healing energies. And they get a good chuckle from that because, like you said earlier, my purpose in life is to help you heal somatically, but I create comedy out of chaos. You know what I'm saying? So, right. There's a proverb in the Bible that says, a merry heart does the body good like medicine.
Yes.
And so I'm bringing all of my modalities into Somatic Homecoming to bring you back home to yourself because, I've worked on celebrities where money is not a problem. So anybody that they want to hire is an option. And they get off my mat and they're like, that was the best body work I've ever had in my life. And I'm like, really? Like, oh, thank you. Like, and I've never gotten an ego from it because in the hidden temple of Wat Prat Lat is a temple in Chiang Mai. And it was an amazing pilgrimage that I had before going up into the jungles of Chiang Rai to do my training in Thailand over there in northern Thailand. And I was having such a remarkable day. This temple is built up like on the 3/4 of the way up this mountain called Doi Su Tep. And going up it, it's called the Monk's Trail, where the greenery, it changes. There's like several like stations of different types of environment. And you get to this top and there's this enormous bell that looks like the Liberty Bell without a crack in it. And they've inscripted on it, anyone who hits this bell in honor of healing, an individual or a collective, this reverberation will go out from the mountain. And I was just like, I'm getting chills just thinking about this, right?
Yep.
Next thing I know, I'm following the stream and way off the path of where this temple is, Doi Su Tep, I look down and they put in this beautiful mosaic in English about 6 feet wide, and it says low ego.
Wow.
Yes, right? That's exactly what I said.
Just like enough
It blew my mind, and it's on this stream, but it's not like in the main part of a trail. Like you kind of had to like be
open,
exploring and adventuring to find it. And that right there gave me the idea for my business. I was like, this is a sign from our ancestors. We all come from the same blood, by the way. So why we keep warring with each other is just sickening to me. But that's another podcast. We're keeping this one upbeat. But man, having to see that. And so I tell folks, I was like, I stay low ego. No ego is not healthy. You're dead or, suicidal, or you just don't care. Huge ego wounds people, which we've seen in doctors and surgeons and those types that are like, feel like they know better and they're actually fixers for you. That scares the hell out of me because I'm like, you're going to do so much more harm than you could possibly do good by just starting there. You're done.
I think of people who think they are God or they are their own God, like that high ego.
Yes. And it's sickening.
And so thinking about you with your healing and being a guide for people in that safe space, I'm sure people are really vulnerable in your care. I'd like to hear more too about like the somatic practice, like what that involves.
Oh man. Wow. Amazing. Where to begin? It is an honor to watch people become vulnerable. And it's why my somatic practice is literally my favorite thing to do. Because, back to the word healer, I've healed myself of Crohn's disease in the 20-teens. I was in LA trying to make it as an actor, and I realized through work I was doing that Crohn's is the worry person's disease. And, but I healed myself. Dr. V, the world-renowned Dr. V, IBD specialist at Cedars-Sinai, shout out, love that guy to pieces. He helped me heal. I couldn't do it without his help, but I had to believe in myself, and I had to also not believe from the medical establishment that was well-meaning, but they were like, oh, you have Crohn's disease, you're going to have a colostomy bag, or this is going to be your life for the rest of your life, you're going to have to be on...
Incurable.
Yes. And I said, wait a minute, time out. This is my body, okay? I got to take agency back of this. And I said, if Crohn's is the worry person's disease and worry is stored in the belly, if I worried myself sick, I'm going to not worry myself into healing. And I went down that road and I was like, I'm not ever going to have a colostomy bag. I'm not going to be reliant on medication for the rest of my life. And I'm healing this. And the doctor, he didn't disregard it, but he was like, I was like, challenge accepted, dude. That's all I need. You give me a thing like that, I'm like, I'm doing this for spite now. And I'm proud of myself because it was like the first major self-healing breakthrough that I had in my life. And then this past year, just yesterday, was 1 year to the day, February 20th, of my rotator cuff surgery.
Heck yeah.
And again, world-renowned surgeon out here in the Bay Area sewed up 4 full thickness tears. And I was like, I'm healing myself in record time because I cannot stop doing my practice, and it's very demanding physically.
I was going to say, because it is still manual work, right?
It totally is. It totally is. I would love to extend it out toward taking Zoom calls like this with clients and helping them like with the style of Hakomi. We could talk a second about that, but it's an indigenous culture's way of saying, okay, you're going through XYZ in your life. Where are you feeling that in your body right now while you're telling me this story? And I could help you there because that would help me on like the time I was down this past year to still be working. But whether it's bullheadedness or just champion tenacity, I never got the joy that I got from, counseling people on the phone is one thing, or Zoom calls, but to be with them physically. And I tell my clients, especially the first ones, I go, look, I work on the floor with a lovely Thai rollout mat. It's a very grounding experience. Not to poo-poo anybody's traditional body work or massage therapy that 99% of them use tables. I'm a long dude. My limbs are like dangling off of the thing, and I'm like, I'm not comfortable. Like, is this thing gonna hold me? You know what I mean? I've had 400 pounders on my floor on my mat, and I've had 40 pounders. You know what I mean? From children to obese billionaires. You know what I'm saying? But man, because the most significant part of my training was done in Thailand. I was over there for a while at different temples, and I just, Thai massage gets a bad rap of being very brutal, or unfortunately sex trade, and there's no sex, no violence in my work. So I tell people, I have to stress it's a very gentle Thai massage kind of framework, which is why I'm working on the floor. And, to lay on your back with your belly up is, once you go horizontal, you're in the most vulnerable position ever. And the king of the jungle, the lion, you never see him laying on his back. Even in the zoo, he has no apex predators above him going to get him. He doesn't do it. It just doesn't make sense. So I say, a first session, you're going to be nervous because you're not going to know what to expect. And I'm nervous as hell when I don't get body work, and I'm very nervous when I do get it because there's a lot of bad body work out there,
Sure. Yes.
And again, well-meaning people, but they're coming from a sense of ego. and technique and fixing and coming on to a person's body versus I am like, no, you got to deconstruct all that. I'm a minimalist in like every sense of the word and all my practices, even my design work. It's like design by reduction. We don't have to add to this thing.
They say that with music too. See what you can remove out and still get the essence. With levels, when you're mixing, like take it out and then gently bring it in until you hear it.
Yes.
To me, I think it is a life principle in many ways.
Totally. In the master Yo-Yo Ma, he was in the On Being podcast with Krista Tippett years ago. I never forgot this. He was like, music is what happens in between the notes. I got chills just re-saying that. And it was, decade or two ago when he said this thing. And he also said, I see myself as a musician. We are there to serve the audience. They're coming to watch us perform, but I see them as guests in my house. And I was like, oh!
Well, it changes it from a lens of like performance, look at me, to I am here to serve you, which within bodywork, I'm sure is the same. I'm here to help. You need me. You need my help. I'm here to fix you, which we hear a lot in traditional medicine where I have to remind friends sometimes seeking a doctor. I say, they work for you. You can fire them at some point. If that doctor, if that physician's not, you can fire them and say, no, we've gotten so far away from our innate, that mind-body connection. I like how you've said, like, we're all walking each other home and like you're bringing people back to themselves.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. It's so good to hear that affirmation. I get chills when it really resonates with someone because that's what it is. That's really all it is. Soma in the Greek simply means wholeness. So soma for me, yes, mind-body connection, but then I take it a step further. It's mind-body-spirit connection. Yep. And this has nothing to do with religion, world religions, people's belief systems. I see spirit as we are all connected through source. And, it's just that beauty of threes. And to have that mind-body-spirit connection, when a person can tap into that, then you're empowering them to take somatic agency of themselves to where when they're not in a session with you or me, they're able to apply these principles to anything that comes up in their life. Driving in traffic or, you get a bad phone call, somebody dies. It's like, where are you feeling that in your body? And to immediately go to, all right, this is simply energy that's being stored in my body. How can I release this?
It makes me think of, a couple things. One of them being after I had a car accident where I hydroplaned going up a hill, but I didn't have anti-lock brakes, old school car. So when I hydroplaned, the car didn't turn and I hit a telephone pole going very slow, but the impact on my body was tough. I never got headaches before that. Thankfully, through healing, those are lessening. Also, thinking of like, I have a headache right now. Like, what is going on? I literally have too much on my brain.
Yes.
But I remember being in like an acupuncture appointment and I had a lot of tightness in my hips because I saw it coming and I braced, right? Is it correct that like your hips kind of hold grief?
They hold our sacral chakra.
Yeah.
Our chakra
like
of
your root?
Relating to others. Well, the root is right below the sacral. It's root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and then crown. Those are the main 7. There's actually chakras in your knees, chakras in your hands. I mean, this thing can get really complicated, and well-meaning people that like to pontificate and say these long words in Sanskrit and or English, God bless them. It's not my jam. I kiss it. I keep it simple somatically, okay?
Minimalist again.
Again, because it worked. You don't have time for this. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just me trying to show you how intelligent I am if I'm like throwing around Sanskrit all the time. And then are you going to remember that after the session? No.
And is that low ego?
It's low ego. And that's why it works every time. Like Colt 45 and Billy D. Williams. Remember that commercial? Works every time. He had that mustache. It was so smooth. Lando, man. And so I bring Lando into it. I bring, Ayurvedic healing into it. All kind of stuff.
Yes.
It's because my training has been so diverse because I learned in the last several years that I'm a truth seeker because of my upbringing. And, like yourself, my parents raised us Baptist for a while, but then we went to a non-denominational church, and it was a bit better. But, even my college was Reformed Protestant. It was like the rules.
I didn't know that.
And, it was nonstop, man. I didn't start to unweb myself from this thing until like the 20 teens. So that alone is traumatizing and held in my body.
Sure.
So for you to go through that accident and feel it in your hips, I would say, how were your relationships at that time?
I just went through like my first breakup. My parents were officially separating. I had just quit the job at the chiropractor's office that I worked for. And I think someone that passed stopped, and they had called 911, and they're like, do you want an ambulance? And I remember at the time saying, does that cost money? And like, yeah, it's going to cost. And I was like, no, that's okay. Because I just quit the job that I could walk to, just totaled my car.
Wow.
And I had to then call the chiropractor where I just quit and say, hey, they're telling me I should get x-rays. And he's like, we can take your x-rays at the office tomorrow. That was the first time in my life, especially with the breakup combined, where it felt like grief. And I remember my mom even saying, more so about the breakup because the accident hadn't happened just yet. And she was like, you're grieving. This is grief. At that time, I think I was 22. And I saw it on my grandparents. The only thing I had lost to death was like a pet. Maybe. I don't even know if at that time. And so I always equated grief to death. I was like, what do you mean I'm grieving? And she was like, there's a massive loss in your life, right? You're grieving. And I also recognized my parents were each other's like one and only. So like they didn't even have the context of like your heart breaks and then one day it will heal and you'll meet someone else, or you meet yourself first, really, hopefully. And they were going through their own grief, clearly, with the end of their marriage. I was like, grief, what do you do? What does that mean? What am I supposed to do with this? And so being the nerd I am, I went online. I was like, books on grief. And C.S. Lewis's A Grief Observed came up, and I read that. It was years ago that I read it now, but from what I remember, it involved him losing his wife to cancer or an illness, and him kind of being like, why, God, why? And that felt appropriate for where I was. I was like, okay, I don't want to do the whole why me thing because things happen to everyone, but I am having a hard time reconciling why it feels like everything in my life is falling apart. And I got this visual. Like, I feel like I get truth in terms of a visual. Some people are like, oh yeah, like this scripture came to mind, or like this like inner stillness voice came to mind. But for me, it was a lot more visual, where going through that, I got this visual of I was clinging, like my fists were clasped, like I was trying to hold on to that relationship that ended. Like I didn't want to let go. I still very much loved that person. And in my mind, I was like, no, but nothing was wrong. We're supposed to be together. And I felt like God was just like, with your fist closed, I can't give you what I have for you. You can't receive it, and you have to let go. But then there's that moment when you let go where they're empty, right? And it's terrifying.
Yes.
You don't know if something else is going to go into the hand.
Yes. Well said.
So that was that time. And I remember later with acupuncture, the woman, she said, I want you to take a moment and thank your body for protecting you. And she said, they seized up to protect you. You saw it coming. They seized up. I want you to take a minute and say thank you. It makes me want to cry even now. Like, thank you for protecting me. It's okay now. I'm safe. You can release. And it goes to me along with what you're saying about teaching people, giving them the tools as you're working with them. And I like what you've said before to me, like you work with people, not on them. You work with them.
Yes. Huge difference.
Absolutely. And you're giving them the tools to come home to themselves, which to me says you're teaching people how to be fully integrated into their body, that they're able to trust themselves again.
There it is. That is why I get jazzed up on every session.
And that's massive.
As long as I stay low ego, it happens every time. Every class of people, every gender, we all come from the same blood.
Yep.
We all come from the same. And back to you, your grief points are here, like where your torso meets your arms and the front of your shoulder and stuff, right?
Yeah, like the side of this like little armpit area.
Yes, the treatment points for your grief points are right there. But you felt it in your hips because you were grieving relational loss at that time. Had you been grieving something else, that small bump to the telephone pole, you would have stored it somewhere else in your body. That's why the body holds the stories. And we have to honor these stories. And I've heard very wise, educationally wise doctors say, well, that's just your story. And I wanted to kill them.
Sure.
These hands can go quickly from healing to, wait a minute now, I'm going to go Al Pacino on you. And I'm like, just my story. And I never forgot that. And I was like, no, it is my story. And my story needs to be honored. And if I have to fight for my own story like this, every person coming to me for a somatic healing session has most likely had to fight for theirs. And so I start there. I tell my clients, you don't have to tell me anything. I'm sensing it like a musician. Like, it's like I see, for our jazz heads out there, my sessions, when they're sizzling, one of us is Miles Davis, one of us is John Coltrane. You cannot make Kinda Blue without both of those giants.
Sure.
But then ego got in the way and they broke up in that band and then did their solo stuff, and great. But Kinda Blue is a masterpiece. 45 minutes long, 1954 or 6. I mean, think about the carnage in America and the civil rights movement. And these two black elders come together and make this masterpiece despite all that. It's just like, I get chills just thinking about it.
I love that.
But man, that's because they checked their ego and they were playing. I have an innate ability to see your inner child.
I believe that.
From the beggar to the billionaire.
I believe that because it was not very long into our conversations. I don't even know what I was saying prior. You followed it up with an audio note starting, beloved. Beloved. Be loved. And I was just like, this guy doesn't even know how much he just healed in my soul from years previous. And continue on that note, though. Like, I do believe you can see that inner child quick.
It's my gift, and I can't explain that to people. But that's why I call the session the somatic experience. You got to be there. You got to be there on the live show, watching these two jazz greats go at it and just riff. Yo-yo ma, it's what's happening between the notes. It isn't only your story that's affecting this. It is now your present time and space. And you clinging to that relationship absolutely made it be stored in your hips. Versus
these hips are open now, by the way.
Oh, totally. And I can tell by your posturing on this Zoom podcast call. It's amazing. And so celebration. You know what I'm saying? It's really remarkable. That's why I call it transformational body work. You will feel transformed with a money-back guarantee. I've never had to refund anybody. And I'm like, one of these days, maybe. I mean, whatever. Maybe if my ego gets the worst of me or something, whatever. But I'm not even worried about that anymore. I'm more worried about drumming up the new business and how to present myself to new clientele in the marketing front facing of it than I am the practice. The practice is like, it's riding
Speaks
a bike.
for itself.
Yes,
Yeah.
man. It is so lovely when it's done in tenderness and in reverence for your highest healed self. And so if I'm able to see your inner child, I just see us as two kids in the sandbox playing. I read a meme or a verse. It was like, it's our responsibility to inspire awe in each other.
Oh, I love that.
And when you do that, the healing and all that other stuff just happens subconsciously beneath the hood.
You inspire awe in me.
Thank you. Likewise. I mean, I'm serious. Man, our Cuzzy Cast, these voice memos going back and forth that we get the luxury of being able to listen to whenever we have a time frame because of the demands of modern life, like we started with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I mean, it's just so many gems that you have said. And even right now, the way you're reiterating certain things, I'm getting somatic chills all up and down my being because I spell it that way. You know, beloved, you know, capital B, lowercase e, capital L, a lowercase, or capital loved, you know what I'm saying? Whatever it takes at the time to match that energetic frequency. And so, you know, my work, it's like a combination of three kind of things. It's somatic therapy, where you're reconnecting with your body's innate wisdom, number one. It's Thai yoga body work, which is a deeply relaxing, gentle, restorative touch. And by touch, I mean my clients are fully clothed in something that they would feel comfortable with at a group yoga class. Whether that's shorts and no shirt, whatever your jam is. Usually it's like leggings or jogging pants and a shirt. Depending on the day and the climate and temperature, I do a little bit of oil work sometimes, massage cream work at times, but I've found that starting with someone and using gentle compressions, rocking back and forth from your left and right side, crossing over your midline, meaning your right side is your divine masculine. It's the outgoing part of us that every one of us has, despite our gender. And then the left side is our receiving divine feminine side. Mother Earth, Father Sun. Father Sun goes out and shines, and Mother Earth absorbs and grows, right? We have this in each of us, and we're all in this gamut of it. By doing that compression, we're 70% water. And so matching the tides of the ocean was one of the beautiful things of being out here in the Bay Area. You gently go back from crossing that person's center line, midline, it naturally puts them into the parasympathetic state, which is rest and digest, versus, you know, the hyper fight, flight, freeze mode.
Is that because it's mimicking water, like the womb?
Yes, absolutely. And it's natural. The body goes, this makes sense. This is safe, therapeutic, healing touch.
Right.
And I tell people, especially a woman is kind of showing like, well, I have sexual trauma in my past. I'm going, listen to me. You will never feel any sexual energies in that session because that is damning for the session. You're going to know it. That has no place in a healing session. I remember this one woman, she said, well, I'm really glad that you're saying that you're a sexual abuse survivor too on the phone call, because I love to do a 30-minute intake if people have time for that, because it makes the session on the day much more rewarding for all of us, but it establishes trust. Whatever you feel comfortable telling me, it doesn't leave this room, it doesn't leave this mat, it doesn't leave this phone call. That being said, you don't have to tell me anything. It's energetically going to present itself. But for us to establish this safe container together, Healing begins by being heard.
I love that.
And that's why I take the intake call. You cannot heal somebody that you're talking at like most doctors do.
Right.
And so she said she has, severe childhood abuse. And so she was coming over to this doctor's office I was working out of in Mill Valley. And I thought, man, I don't know anything else about this woman. So I said, she's very traumatized still. So I left the door to the treatment room open. Instead of greeting her, standing up like I do most other people, I positioned myself in a power down position, sitting cross-legged off in the farthest corner away from the door. So this woman could come in, see my 6'1" ass sitting like a child, waiting for her in peace. And it changed the whole dynamic. She came in, she ran through the office, checking every other door and stuff to make sure she was safe. And it was such a beautiful teaching for me. And had I not let her take control of coming into that office, I would have lost that. And one of my beloved teachers out here told me, they're like, if you're not watching your client walk into the treatment room, you just lost 90% of what they're going to give you before you could even start. And it's such a sad thing because most people are down and they're in their head and they're just thinking about the right thing to say or their sales pitch and like, hurry up, get on my table. No, I never work like that. I never will. Now, every session isn't that extreme, but it was such a beautiful teaching for me because I was like, I listened to my body's innate somatic intelligence and meeting her inner child.
You let her lead.
Let her lead.
Her lead. And because it's about her healing and not you, right? And not your ego. You let her lead. And I think that's rare.
Yeah.
And we need body work like you offer. We need that. And thank you also for sharing your experience.
Oh, man.
It's not okay that any of that happened to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, what you were saying also makes me wonder about the experiences that we've been through and them honing these aspects of us so that we are able to heal, help walk with people who have been through similar situations.
Yes.
That our difficult, awful, abusive situations we've been through, we can utilize those to relate to people and
100%.
And walk with them in that.
I've had so many amazing teachers, and one is coming to mind that said, you will attract people to your business that are going through the same thing you've gone through or that you're still unresolved in. Mm-hmm. So my sexual abuse childhood history has nothing to do with anything in my practice, but the universe sends me men, women, and everyone in between that have had similar stories because we heal through storytelling. That's how we relate and connect. If you don't put your life and your soul into your music and into your lyrics, if you're just like bubblegum popping it out, it's just whatever. But you put yourself in there, your unique story, then I'm like, I could really relate to this. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I've always wanted it to be. Music was a massive part of my therapy growing up.
Yeah.
I'd say like I had a great childhood, and then like around 14, life just felt really difficult with like family dynamics. And yeah, music was my go-to for how I processed that, whether through lyrics or singing. Yeah, but I always wanted to show up fully, like really tap into the feeling and the emotion with my music, in hopes that if just one person heard it and it helped them, because music truly saved my life at times. And then when I worked at the group home with foster youth, I try to tell every artist this, that your art matters. Because when I worked at this group home, we'd have to create these safety lists of like, if you're feeling unsafe or if they even want to just run. The group home I worked for was low security, so the door was always open so they could leave. And so we had a safety list for our youth, and it always said music and like movies or TV. So I always ask the artist, don't downplay your role, because these things truly have saved our kids' lives at time when they say, I'm feeling unsafe, I want to harm, I want to do this. Can I have my MP3 player? And we give them that, and it takes people away from the edge. So that's what music did for me, that if I could ever do that for just one person, that would make me so happy. And you bring that too to your somatic body work. Like you don't bring your own stuff into your actual sessions. Your own stuff might inform how you approach these things, right? Like letting your clients lead and check out every room.
And I'm only sharing this story, again, not out of pity or not out of shock. If there's, like your music, if there's one person out there who's in a domestic abuse situation, one-on-one, or a cult where a community is doing something to them like this, I want them to know that there is hope, there is a way through this, get to safety as quickly as possible, trust yourself as much as you can, keep gently moving forward, and you will gain the confidence and sure-footedness that you once had and you've always wanted to have. And I'm living proof, like that Mary J. Blige song in the movie The Help, okay?
Well, and that you can come back to yourself, right? And that there's hope.
Yes.
And you've said it, healed people heal people. So your story's there, but you make sure to show up healed for your clients.
Yes, well said. Thank you for making that distinction. That's huge. And, that's these things that, that are in us, but we forget to vocalize. And if it's, I have this thing where I say 3/4 of a something, but that last quarter, really brings it home. So thank you for being that, that resounding gong.
We're just flowing. Kindreds.
We really
Same.
are. We really are. Same kindreds. That's amazing. Oh, man. Yes.
So, Somatic Homecoming. It is the name, meaning, I want you to come home to your body, to come home to yourself. And so from carrying stress, tension, past trauma in your body, my practice offers a gentle, holistic approach to healing through three main things. Somatic therapy, where you reconnect with your body's intimate wisdom, you heal yourself. Thai body work, which is a Thai yoga massage, a deeply relaxing, gentle, restorative touch using that compression, crossing over the midline, left and right, reincorporating your divine masculine and feminine. And then Ayurvedic healing so you're aligning yourself with nature's rhythms for balance and vitality. Now, focusing on your 10 sen, which in Thai means your 10 main energy lines. Sen is energy. And, using mindful, gentle compression through guided movement, breath work, and body awareness, you and I, help you release tension, regulate your nervous system, and cultivate deep self-connection to your authentic self.
I love that.
Thank you so much for loving that. And that is why my gift, my secret weapon under the hood of being able to see your inner child is so crucial to this, because life keeps happening to all of us. Some of us are abused in a myriad of ways as children. Some of us don't get abused until later, but we're all going to go through traumas. And like you were saying, I was the same way. And I think growing up in like a fundamentalist religious setting can be so damaging, because you were taught to be like, well, if it's not death, it's not grief. Oh, honey, you were grieving way before your grandmother died. You know what I'm saying? Like recently, like you were grieving loss of relationship, loss of goals, loss of dreams, loss of gumption. I mean, we lose our way all the time. And that's why I say that Ram Dass quote, We're all just walking each other home. It takes the charge out of everything. And the way I'm talking to you right now as my beloved cousin is the same way I talk to wealthy, so-called powerful billionaires and the people that I'm donating sessions to. I'm this way across the board, and yet I am not, and not in a conniving way. I default to like the tremendous acting background I have to where I want to become your best favorite scene partner. When you come to me for a session, you're shining. You're the star of the show. It's your life. I want to be your Danny Glover, okay? I want to be, the yin to your yang. I'm feeding you. And all of my acting teachers throughout my career always told me, you are a very giving actor. And I was like, what does that mean? They're like, it's the highest compliment you could receive. I'm like, really? And then when I rewatched movies through that lens, I'm like, Samuel L. Jackson kills at this. He is the star of the show, yet when he's riffing with Travolta in those scenes, he's totally lobbing, he's his Pippen to his Jordan. And he knows he can effortlessly go from Jordan to Pippen to Rodman, Jordan. And not many people can do that, man. They're one-trick ponies. We raise each other's vibrations.
I'm like, it says so much about someone, too, if they're just in it for their own or if they're in it to grow the group, the community.
Yes. Are you giving or are you taking?
What a concept. Yeah.
Right?
Give a little.
And here's the thing that you're visual, like me. Look at the number 8, okay? It means resurrection, rebirth, yes?
Yes.
Lay it down on its side. It's an infinity symbol. And what's infinity? You don't know where the lines of give and receive start to blur and they become one. That's how we get to infinity. There's infinite possibilities in our lives and in our healing journey. And it's only when you have the vulnerability to resurrect yourself out of the trenches of your traumas and then go horizontal. And now you are choosing to be the infinity symbol where that client is giving me permission to work on their soma in honor of their healing and highest self. This work and coming at it with reverence yet playfulness, and the bottom line always being in honor of that person's healing and uplifting their soma to their highest authentic self. I just wish people would do this in business, in tech, in AI, in life, relationships, intimate, casual, all the above. Like, there's so much going on, and we are all so much more alike than we could ever fully realize. And it just shows, this work shows me this repeatedly. And I'll basically tell you in a nutshell what I'm going to be doing, starting you on your back, starting at your feet out of reverence, Jesus washed the disciples' feet kind of thing, all the way to it's the furthest thing from your head. And so always starting with them on their back when they're ready, at their feet, using that compression line, going up the legs. And then I get you into one side position, then I get you into prone, face down, then I get you into the other side position. And then they always end with a nice, relaxing cranial sacral. I love doing that. And I'm actually kicking around ideas of offering 15 to 30 minute just sacral cranial things. I call them temple tune-ups. You start on these points on the side of your eyes or beyond the temple. There's these little divots in our skull that everybody has. You could feel them on yourself. Just do that yourself someday and just sit there with the lightest pressure possible. It is immediately like, listen to my voice. Like it's just, I'm not acting. It slows everything down. And I start, right? Yes. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
And then I go down from your third eye to your throat chakra to your solar plexus chakra, and I'm balancing them at the end.
Got to fly up your way and
yes, please.
Get on this. Get on
yes.
this mat. on that note, how can people obtain your somatic bodywork?
Awesome. Come to me if you're in the Bay Area or anywhere and you can get here. If you have the means, I always love being flown to clients. That was a fun gig when I was getting flown around the world. But I also know that those things are not feasible for people, myself included. Money is tight all around. And I'm kicking around an idea of how to do Zoom sessions or FaceTime sessions where it'll be more of a somatic coaching thing. I've worked hard at this craft, but I've also been given a gift going back to our grandmothers. And we come from a family of healers. The healers that your grandmother was, my grand was, you are, I am. I feel an obligation to give this back out into the world.
Emma and Lois are proud of you, man.
Man, that really means something. That hits me squarely in the chest in the greatest way possible. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing about your healing. And thank you for showing up for other people for their healing. And thank you for providing that hope. I love your piece on that hope for survivors. And you're a survivor.
And thank you for visiting.
Thank you for visiting.
I mean that pun intended. That's a double entendre because we need you. We need your voice. And you're giving a platform like this to folks like me. I mean, this has been one of the most healing experiences I've had in recent years. So truly, thank you so much.
Right back at you. You calling me beloved healed.
Isn't that amazing?
A ton of things. I have a question I like to ask everyone.
Great.
If you could know how or when you would die, would you want to know?
Absolutely not.
Tell me why.
Because I love surrendering to the great mystery of it all.
Great answer.
As concisely as I can put it before this cuts us off. Who knew I could be brief, Alexa?
Well, thank you so much for talking.
Thank you, cousin.
I'll probably send you like 12 more audio messages tomorrow.
Please do. They're the highlights of my day. It's been an anchor of hope. Thank you. A lighthouse in these storms. You've been a lighthouse.
I love that.
I'm on the rocky coast of Northern California. I need my lighthouses. So thank you for being there.
Well, likewise. Right back at you, cuz. I love you.
Through the storms. Here we are.